Hello again, everybody. Welcome into Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips joined by Wes Mitchell. Wes has got a recruiting update for us today, and we talked a little bit with Chris Clark yesterday about some Gamecock football recruiting, and Wes Mitchell joins us now to do the same. Wes, happy holidays. I hope you had a good Christmas. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Had a great Christmas. Hope you did as well, and looking forward to a happy New Year, too.
Yeah, had a fine Christmas, and looking forward to the New Year's Day holiday here with the college football playoff coming up, and big New Year's Day bowl slate as well. So, Wes, talk about Gamecock football recruiting. You know, I was reading the piece that's on Gamecock Central right now. Ray Tanner talking about Will Muschamp and what a tireless worker he is. And I think that's something that Gamecock football desperately needed coming off of the 3-9 campaign here in 2015, and Muschamp really has done exactly what the Gamecocks needed, specifically from a recruiting standpoint, and that is hit the ground running. He's gotten to work right away.
Yeah, no, he absolutely has. I think you look, first of all, Muschamp himself, as far as the recruiting process, him getting after it. You know, he had a week or so, a week and a half maybe to actually go recruit before the dead period hit, and he was able to get a lot done as far as just getting guys on campus. You know, you look at getting Jamarcus King on campus and getting him actually signed, the junior college cornerback, getting a guy like Keir Thomas on, you know, not on campus, but at least getting South Carolina in the mix. We're talking about early enrollee guys that really had one opportunity to kind of see what the school was about as far as official visits. You know, you got your Brandon McElwain's in there, you got your Brian Edwards in, you got guys in who wanted to enroll early and were able to let them see the campus. And then, you know, I think the other thing with recruiting that maybe someone who kind of follows recruiting from the outside, you know, maybe doesn't quite realize is just how important the assistant coaches are, how important it is to hire assistant coaches who can recruit. So, you know, I think if you look at kind of the way that Muschamp approaches recruiting, it's very obvious how important it is to him, not just in his own personal work ethic, but in the guys that he goes after. A lot of these guys are either A, tireless workers on the recruiting trail, or B, guys that just have outstanding personalities, or sometimes even both. You know, I think adding a Brian McClendon to the staff, who's the interim coach at Georgia, you know, adding a guy like Travaris Robinson to the staff, these are all guys that just instantly give South Carolina credibility with recruiting prospects.
Wes, we talked extensively about Will Muschamp's hire of Travaris Robinson, kind of his right-hand man for the last 4 years or 5 years, both at Florida and at Auburn. And we talked about Robinson's reputation as a recruiter and the fact that he's from South Florida and has gotten to work right away on several recruits from South Florida. And that group headlined by the commitment from defensive lineman Keir Thomas just this past week. So talk about Robinson and his work in South Florida already for South Carolina.
Yeah, Travaris Robinson, you know, it was one of these things where his effort in recruiting and his prior relationships in recruiting paid off just almost instantly for South Carolina. You had, first of all, you know, I mentioned Jamarcus King. This is a guy that's the number one junior college cornerback in the entire country, and he set an official visit to South Carolina within hours of T-Rod being on campus. So that kind of tells you what's going on there. Then, you know, you look at, like you said, Keir Thomas. This is a guy that only took an unofficial visit to South Carolina back in the summer, I think. You know, obviously before this staff even got on, the kid had I believe a prior commitment, prior engagement he had to take care of. The only weekend that was available for an official after the staff came on board. So this guy just committed to South Carolina, will enroll in January, and actually didn't even get to take an official visit. So, you know, that obviously tells you something about the relationships that Travaris Robinson has made in South Florida, that these guys, almost sight unseen, were very, very interested in South Carolina and are now going to South Carolina. And, you know, I think Keir Thomas as a player, just to get into that a little bit, I think he's absolutely just what South Carolina needed. You know, he's a guy that, you know, is only about 6'1", 6'2", so that probably hurts him just a little bit. But as far as getting after the passer, you know, being a guy that's just relentless off the edge, quick first step, pretty much has everything else you look at. And you look at this defense and the way that they like to design things, they being Muschamp and Travaris Robinson, they have this buck position that is basically kind of a hybrid defensive end linebacker spot where you put your best pass rusher. And I think Keir Thomas is just a very, very good, fit for that spot.
Yeah, Thomas had 22 sacks in his senior year of high school, and he's coming into South Carolina right away.
You have McElwain, Edwards, C.J. Freeman, and now Keir Thomas as freshman early enrollees, and then, of course, Jamarcus King as well.
All right, very good. Talk about Coach Robinson, Coach Muschamp, some of the other players they're looking at in Florida and in South Florida particularly.
I think you look at the recruiting board and you see that it is ever changing. I think you look at new names popping up that are names fans get excited about because they see 4 and 5 stars beside these guys' names. I think you look at Sam Bruce, a kid that is one of the top wide receivers in the country. He's committed to Miami, but he's going to take an official visit to South Carolina. And South Carolina, probably a long shot for him, but at the same time, if you get a kid on campus, you never really know what could happen. So that's obviously a positive for South Carolina. You look at the kid Nate Craig Myers, who again, one of the top wide receivers in the country, talking about taking an official visit to South Carolina. His half-brother, Javon Myers, could take an official visit to South Carolina. You have a number of guys that are just guys that get fans excited. And I think early on, maybe your fans that necessarily weren't completely sold on the Muschamp hire, they're probably going to sit there and say, well, wow, if this guy can get these kids on campus, even if he doesn't land them, if he can get them on campus before, he's really even got a chance to put everything in place, then what can he do with a full year or a full year and a half to recruit? And, I think that's something that gets the fan base excited.
It is exciting. Gamecock Central Radio, Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell talking recruiting here. Wes, the Gamecocks doing some work in Georgia as well, and I know the Gamecocks have gotten involved with a couple of Georgia prospects very recently here. What can you tell us about that?
First of all, a guy that I actually just talked to here today when we're recording this on Wednesday is Corey Banks, a wide receiver prospect who's committed to North Carolina. He's actually picked up offers from Alabama and South Carolina this week. So talk about, a big week for him. A kid that's obviously seen his stock go up a little bit. Could play receiver, could play defensive back, I think, athletically, but those schools including him as a wide receiver. And he has said it's going to take a lot to turn him from that North Carolina commitment, but at the same time, he's going to official. So anytime a kid officials, then, you got a shot at him. Alabama's going to have a shot at him if they, really want him. South Carolina's going to have a shot at him. And he's from Sandy Creek. That's the place that actually Alan Knott, South Carolina offensive lineman, played at. And he actually played Little League baseball growing up with Bryson Allen Williams, the South Carolina linebacker. So the Gamecocks kind of have, I guess, some connections, if you will, where, he could feel pretty comfortable, I think, with South Carolina. And, to me, it's always one of those things where you want a kid, especially if you're in late like this, you want a kid to have some reasons to feel comfortable. And you want him to have some people he can ask questions to. And I think with those guys that, you certainly have that. And then Alan Cater, who is a guy that was committed to Indiana at one point. He's a 6'5" defensive end prospect that has seen his stock go up as well, and I think that fits the mold. If you're South Carolina, you're late in the process now, you've got a few staff taking over. You're not going to be able to land a full class worth of 4 and 5 star prospects. You're going to have to find some guys that have just had really good senior seasons and have kind of blown up late. I think with Banks and with Alan Cater, the defensive end, he's now getting major attention from Arkansas and North Carolina who have offered. And, I think that obviously says a lot about him as a player. And now the Gamecocks are a major factor for him, too, and he's going to take an official visit to both North Carolina and South Carolina. So he's someone that, I believe at the end of the day, South Carolina should have a pretty good shot to possibly land.
Yeah, Cater, 6'5", 240, and listed as a weak side defensive end out of Georgia, originally committed to Indiana, like you said, Wes, and Arkansas has been on him, and I think those have been among his top schools to this point, but South Carolina just recently offered. He kind of perked up when he got that offer because he likes the proximity to his home, and he talked about the family atmosphere at South Carolina, and he appreciated getting that offer from the Gamecocks. So the Gamecocks have emerged as a player for Alan Cater. Wes Mitchell with me here. Emerson Phillips, glad to have you along on Gamecock Central Radio. Wes, what else do the Gamecocks have coming up on a recruiting front? It's obviously a very important time of year. We're still in the dead period, but that will end in a couple of weeks, and not long after that we'll have signing day coming up in early February. So talk about the next month or 5 weeks for South Carolina football.
Yeah, you know what? I would just tell the fans then to keep their eyes open, keep their ears open, because I think there's going to be plenty of new things to report. It seems like every single day we're learning about this guy is going to take an official visit, or this guy, is interested in South Carolina, or South Carolina's interested in this new name we haven't heard. So I just, it's hard to predict things like this quite yet. But at the same time, I think that one thing it is safe to say is that there's going to be a lot to talk about, a lot for us to report, and a lot for South Carolina fans to read moving forward in recruiting that should, I think, get them excited.
Gamecock recruiting, very much a fluid situation right now. Gamecocks trying to bring some new players, some new prospects into the fold here, and we're coming across new names that the Gamecock staff is working on right now. And if you keep it here on Gamecock Central Radio and check out the site, GamecockCentral.com, we'll keep you abreast of all the latest developments with Gamecock football. You can get breaking Gamecock news alerts delivered to your email inbox. Just text USC to 42828. Text USC to 42828 or check out the Gamecock Central homepage for more information. Wes, thanks for the time and the update today. Happy New Year to you, and enjoy the bowl games this week.
Yes, sir. We hope to talk to you soon, and I hope all those fans out there are reading all of our stuff on GamecockCentral.com as well.
We appreciate your work, Wes. Good talking with you. For Wes Mitchell, I'm Emerson Phillips. Plenty more Gamecock football to come here on Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for joining us.